Let's have a music revolution. Revolution, revolution. Let's have a music revolution. Revolution, revolution. Everybody clap your hands. Music revolution. Everybody clap your hands. Everybody clap your hands. Hi everyone out there, it's Plastic EP coming in from Melbourne, Australia, and also Andrew Soos. Now let me tell you, I got a VIP musician. You've seen my shows. You know, one of my favourite bands of all time is the Angels, Australian band. And to me, it's an honour to have Graham Bidstrup with us. And he's got a brand new book called No Secrets. And I want everyone in the world to look it up, get that book, buy it, and read some fantastic stories. And we welcome you to Music Revolution, Graham. It's just an honour to have you on the show.
Great to be on the Revolution, Plastic and Andrew. And yeah, let's get into the hard hitting questions, man.
That's it. I just want to say I saw you at the Collingwood Town Hall in the 70s, right? And it's like something I've never seen or experienced before in my life. And I got to say, your drumming is unique. Your drumming is the glue that held the band together. And I don't know why you guys aren't like in the Rock of Hall of Fame. I don't know why
you're in the Hall of Fame, definitely.
Hall of Fame overseas, right? You guys,
well, look, we nearly got there. You know, we had a shot. We had a shot in 1980, and unfortunately, by the time we got to America in 1980, after sort of working in Australia for 5 years to get to our #1 spot, we basically started again at the bottom, and we were sort of traveling around, and unfortunately, we didn't have what I call the esprit de corps. We didn't have that spirit that you need to then go for another 3 years to break America. It would have taken us at least 3 years, maybe 5. We would have had to do what AC/DC did, which is basically go and live there and work. And unfortunately, you know, we got to the point where we didn't really have that cohesion where we all wanted to do the same thing. So unfortunately, it didn't happen, but we got close.
Now, I've got to say, in America, how do they know you? By what name? Do they know you as the Angels, or what do they know you as?
No, we had to be called Angel City in America because of the 60s girl group called the Angels. You know, hey, nah, my boyfriend's back. They were the Angels, you know, according to the Americans. So, yeah, we had to change our name, which didn't, in a sense, it didn't really matter because we were starting at the bottom. Like, we hadn't had any records released in America other than imports from the time that we released Face to Face. And that was one of the things that I got a little bit, antsy about. I thought we should have been releasing those records as we made them in Australia, so that when Face to Face was #1 in Australia in 1978 going into 79, that's when that record should have been released in America, not 2 years later. When we finally got to America, we were playing songs that were like 3 years old, and we were playing them in the same style as we had 3 years ago. And what was very apparent very quickly is that America had moved on. Like the East Coast in particular, the CBGBs in New York and all of that punk and new wave stuff, that was not anything, that wasn't happening anymore. So when we played, pardon me, we played songs like Marseille, Face the Day, No Secrets, I Just Want to Be With You, those kind of songs, they didn't fit at all in what you would call new wave or punk or adult. It was more adult orientated rock, as they used to call it, AOR. And, because we hadn't been there, had people heard of our music in 1978 and they go, oh, that's that band that's got Take a Long Line, it's got I Ain't the One, it's got those faster songs. By the time we got there, I don't think people could work out who we were. They couldn't work out if we were a rock band. We sounded a bit like AC/DC, but we didn't look like them. We sounded a bit like a punk band, but we weren't a punk band. We sounded a bit like a rock band, and we kind of were a rock band, except we had a front singer who was more of an actor. So we had we had this dichotomy of people not being able to pigeonhole us. And how the Americans really like to pigeonhole, go that band is there and that band is there, and we didn't fit.
Okay, now for the new people that don't know, because there's music fans all the time, Albert Productions in Sydney, they were producing AC/DC, but they were producing the Angels as well. And then you were opening up for AC/DC. Tell me all about that. That is just like unbelievable right there.
Well, a bit of a dream really for me to join a band that was I joined the band when I came back from London. I'd been living there for a year. I'd been watching bands like the Sex Pistols, the Stranglers, Ian Dury and the Blockheads, or they were called Coolburn and the High Road then, and all of these other bands in the 75, 76. So I came back to Australia and got offered a job in a band that was living in Sydney, being produced by Vanda and Young and being on the Albert's label. So I thought I'd hit gold there. And the whole thing about George and Harry, not only were they producers of the first album, they became production consultants on Face to Face and No Exit, which meant that the band did a lot more of the production work on those two albums, particularly Face to Face. That was the one that we all put in 150% to make that record the best that we could, and I think we succeeded. But Albert's had a plan. Their plan was for the Angels to follow AC/DC around the world. So AC/DC had already been traveling for 2 years, and their plan was for us to start supporting them around the world. And it started, we did the one in Australia, but unfortunately, the band, majority rule of the band, chose to leave Albert's and sign with Epic Records, and that then cut the ties with Albert's. So that whole plan of us following AC/DC around the world disappeared. Now, I think personally, I'm pretty sure I was the only one in that meeting that said, hang on a minute, we've only got one album left to do for Albert's. Let's do that album. Let's finish our contract and let's see what happens. Rather than breaking the contract, having to buy our way out of it, because we had to buy $125,000 to buy out of our Albert's contract in 1980 was a lot of money. That's 25 grand each that we had to find, and we found it from the new record company. They said, sure, here's 125 grand. Now you owe us 125 grand, and we paid that to Albert's. Oh, then we've got to make a record. Okay, well, that's going to be 100 grand because Albert's had a studio, so they used to give us the studio for free. So now we had to pay for a studio. There's another 100 grand. Then we wanted to tour overseas. There's another 100 grand. So like I say in the book, I'm sitting in the Gramercy Park Hotel in New York, and I added up how much money we'd been advanced and how much we made per record and roughly how many records we'd have to sell before I'd make 1 cent. And that was about 4 million records. And I figured, gee, that's going to be a hard ask, considering we'd just been kicked off the Kinks tour, which was our big chance.
Graham, I've read your book.
Yes.
I loved it. I must say I cheated. I had my phone in bed with me and I was listening to the songs you mentioned on YouTube. Went through a lot. You've got a great history. It's, of course, not just the Angels. You've been associated with other musical acts. You've been an integral part of it. Bands like GANGgajang. and also the special contributions, I guess, to the legacy of Jimmy Little. Thank you for introducing me to his beautiful voice.
Great.
What most people probably don't realize about you is you're actually quite a clever man. You're not just the powerhouse behind the drums for Australian music. You did an engineering degree.
I did, yeah. Look, it was something that in the days I was born in 1952, right? Just not long after the war, and the whole thing was you have to go to university, parents saying you have to have something to fall back on. Drumming's fine, but it's not going to make you a living. You need to do something. And I was reasonably good at physics and maths. So I ended up doing a mechanical engineering degree, and I didn't quite finish it. I got pretty close. Um, so I have these funny kind of things now where I see something, I might read something about a bridge or something, and these little formulas keep falling out of my head. How to design a beam so it won't break when you put a weight on it, and all this kind of stuff that I think, as I tell people, my time at university actually taught me how to learn. I learned how to learn. And that's something I think that is probably the best thing about tertiary education, is that you get that opportunity to be self-sufficient, so that you have to learn. You haven't got somebody telling you got to learn this, you got to learn that. You just got to learn it all, and hopefully you get it. You get the questions in the exams.
Buzz,
Now,
is it true that you spent some time on the Valiant automobile assembly line? And if someone's got an old dodgy Valiant, you're
They got
good
a
for
dodgy
a make
Valiant
good, a service on their car?
or a 1976 Centura or a Galant. Yes, I did. I came back from England, and my plan when I came back from England was to make a bit of money and then go back to London or go to New York. I had this thing about going to CBGBs. I really wanted to go to New York. Um, so I came back home, and there was a job on the Chrysler assembly line that paid quite well, believe it or not. But you had to just stand there as a Valiant had come down, and I had to put an accelerator pedal on that, and then a Galant had come down, and I had a hose for the radiator for that, and each car had a different piece. But I did a bit of thinking when I was on that line, and I won. I realised that I was glad that I'd done something. If the music thing didn't, pay out, then I would have something else to fall back on, like the engineering stuff. I actually I actually got offered a job by Chrysler. This foreman came up to me one day and he said, "Hey, your mate down the line says that you've got a degree in mechanical engineering. What the hell are you doing here?" And I said, "I've just come back from England. I just want to make some money and go back to England." And he said, "What are you going to do there?" And I said, "Music." He said, "Well, good luck with that." And then about 2 days later, he came back to me and he said, "Hey, they're starting a new engine factory at Lonsdale down in South Australia. Do you want a job as an engineer?" And there's a part of me that went, maybe I'll do that for a year or something. And then I thought, nah, I don't think that's going to be me. And then I got offered the gig in the Angels. So, I never really went down that path, but it would have
now,
could
I
have been
ask
fun.
you, just in '73, do you remember the Chrysler that had the 360 engine in it?
Yeah, absolutely. The Hemi, they had a Hemi, didn't they?
Yeah,
251 or
I
something.
got to explain something. My dad bought one. He bought a brand new one, right, in '73.
Oh, not me.
I think it was called, the model was C something. It started with two initials. Anyway, he bought a brand new gold, black vinyl, 360 motor, and no one had that car. I wish we had it today, but we had a problem with it 6 months later with a part. But I'm saying, he took us to Adelaide in it from Melbourne. And
Yeah,
I remember we're driving down the road and a bird hit the windscreen and just went the back of the car. I'll never forget that. But
buddy.
what a car, gold car, black vinyl roof,
Oh
electric
yeah,
seats. There was nothing like it.
they were insane. I had an AP6. I had a Valiant AP6, probably about that same time, 72. It had a push button automatic, just up on the right hand side, little one, two, three, four, five. It was pretty funny. But
Half of my relatives have got that in Reservoir. Now, I just want to say, I just want to, well, you know, the Greeks, they were the biggest buyers of Valiants. They didn't buy
absolutely.
Mercedes, they bought the Greek Mercedes, which is the Valiants. Now, Graham, I want to ask you, right? Tell me about this story and let's go into detail.
Yeah,
You go overseas and you're a
yeah,
support act to a big major band, right? Now, this
yeah.
major band doesn't want you to play because they know how good you are and they don't want you to upstage them. Tell me about that.
Well, look, when we did our third tour of America at near the end of 1980, this was our opportunity to, you know how I said that, you know, Albert's had the plan with the AC/DC and stuff. So we scored this tour with the Kinks. Now I was a huge Kinks fan. I loved the Kinks, right? And we had this tour with the Kinks that was going to start on the West Coast, and it was going to finish for 2 nights in Madison Square Garden in New York. And we thought to ourselves, this was going to be our opportunity to break out of, we'd been playing like 1,000 seat rooms. This was our chance to play, you know, 15, 20,000 seat rooms. Now, unfortunately for us, we started working on the East Coast where we'd already played several times. And in particular, Portland, Seattle, where all the grunge music came from, we were quite popular there. In fact, we could sell out a 2,000 seat theatre in Seattle earlier in 1980. We sold that out at full ticket price. So when we came back with the Kinks to do our it was our third gig of that tour, there was half of the 10,000 seat audience who knew who we were. So we got offered an encore and we did it. And then we got a word from the Kinks management that that wasn't particularly cool. We shouldn't be doing encores because we're going to upstage them. Now, we thought that a support band, the job of the support band is to get the audience so hyped up that when the main band comes on, everyone's warmed up. So we thought we were doing the right thing. So then we played the next night in Portland. Same thing happened. We had people who knew who we were. Same thing happened. We got asked for an encore. We didn't do one because we were told we couldn't do one. But we still went down really well. And one of the things that Ray Davies got pissed off about is that Doc had a radio microphone and went running into the audience, right? They didn't like that. So then the next night, where were we? San Francisco, and they said, okay, Doc's not allowed to run out into the audience, and you're not allowed to use these lights, and you're not allowed to move off this part of the stage. So what happens? Doc, of course, goes up you, and he runs straight out into the audience. They get really pissed off again. So then we go to LA. We don't get a sound check. My drum kit's set up on the stage in front of their drum kit, so there's no extra production or anything. We don't get a sound check. We go to San Diego. It's even worse. And at the end of the San Diego gig, we got kicked off the tour. Had we started on the East Coast, where basically we couldn't get arrested, you know, because we didn't know, nobody really knew us over there, would have been totally different, you know, because we wouldn't have got that mass appeal that we got on the West Coast. So, you know, I explain in the book my first meeting with one of my heroes, and that was Dave Davies from the Kinks. And I walked out of the dressing room, a long corridor leading towards the stage, and Dave Davies walked out of his door just a bit further down. And I walked up to him, my hand outstretched. I said, "Hey, Dave, I'm Buzz from Angel City. It's a real honor to be on this tour with you. I was a huge Kinks fan, you know, grew up with your music." And he just looked straight past me to a security guard and said, "How do you get to the stage?" He left my hand hanging, didn't say a word to me, and just walked straight past me. And the security guy said, "Hey man, welcome to Chicago. You know, that's some welcome to a tour, man." I said, "Yeah. It's like, you know, thanks very much, Dave, you know."
You've taught me a few things about the music business. I think the first thing you've taught me is that the music business is, in fact, a business. And you've talked a lot about your experiences with, I guess, making contributions to other people's work and probably not being acknowledged financially or in credits the way that you should be.
Yeah, look, in days gone by, shall I say, when I was young and had youthful exuberance, I would approach any session that I did, whether it be as a drummer or a producer, I would just, or a writer. I mean, I would go into rooms with people and, they'd be playing their songs. If I was producing, for example, and they'd sort of play something, I'd say, in that chorus, when you go into that, if you use that chord instead of that chord, or you change that melody to do that, or maybe there's a better word that you can use there instead of that. So I'd help people write songs. And sometimes I would ask for a credit, and that credit would mean that I would get a little piece of whatever it made. Other times, people would say to me, "Well, you're getting a royalty for being a producer, so we won't give you one for co-writing," which is fine until you go fast forward 20 years. And most of the deals that I did as a producer, where I would be given a piece, a small percentage, sometimes 5% of what the record made as a producer royalty, when that deal was sold to somebody else, and then another record company bought it, and then it ends up on Spotify, all of a sudden, the deal that I'd done in 1979 or 1985 didn't apply anymore. So people would just say to me, "Sorry, mate, you don't get any royalties now." Now, sometimes that would be, a couple of grand a year or something like that. Other times it might be worth a lot more because that song might go on to do something in advertising or in a film. That's when there's another royalty paid to the people who have their names on there as a writer or as a share of the song itself, the production of the song. So yeah, look, I do mention a little bit about that experience, and also that there are bands like Mental as Anything, like Split Ends, like Midnight Oil, that had an agreement to pay a percentage of the writing royalties back to the people in the band that don't write, that help make the things worth money. So I think it's only fair to do that. And unfortunately, the Angels didn't agree with that. They didn't agree with that kind of deal. So although I can, hand on heart, say that Chris and I definitely helped write some of those songs in a rehearsal room. Because what happens these days, with people that make music, um, maybe there's a person that makes a beat. Like my son's a great example. My son's 35. He makes a beat which is drums, bass, keyboards, melody line. He'll make that, and then he'll get someone to top line it, which means someone to write a melody and write a lyric. Now, sometimes top liners, depends on how famous they are, could get between 20 and 30 to 40% of a song. But it still means that the people that made the music for that get about 50% of it. So my argument was that because the band sits in a rehearsal room and gets all of the music together, because there's no way that someone like me can sit in a room for 4 hours or 5 hours while somebody plays an A chord. Occasionally, someone, either Chris and I, is going to say, "For please, someone play a different chord, play a D." And Chris would go, "Yeah," and then follow it with an E. And you go D, E, D, E, A, da, da, da. And then you've got the start of Take a Long Line. Then we would sit there and we would make the music, we would tweak it, and we would say, "Where do we put the solo? Do you have different chords for the solo?" "Oh, I don't know." And we'd try it and we'd play it. And, after several hours, we would have that music. And then someone like with Take a Long Line, Rick, had a set of lyrics that he'd written about some people he'd seen in King's Cross. So he wrote, he had a set of lyrics. I think he and Doc probably worked out the melody for that. But my thing is that each member of the band should have been given 10% of the songwriting for being that member of the band that helps make those songs. And unfortunately, they said no. There you go.
Yeah, Graham, in your book, you talk about the three greatest frontmen that you've ever witnessed. Number three is a powerful Jimmy Barnes. Number two, Shirley Strawn. And I'm going to ask you to talk about each of these three and leave it to you to reveal who was number one on your list as well.
Well, it wouldn't be too. It's like I'll start at three. When I worked with Jimmy Barnes, and I'd known Jimmy Barnes for quite a long time, I talk about meeting him in the book the first time I met him, and I ended up working with him. I ended up doing that Soul Deep tour, and I did the Soul Deep live recordings. We lived very close to each other down in the Southern Highlands of New South Wales. Um, I witnessed him not only in Cold Chisel, of course, but when I was sitting on stage with him, just how commanding he was with his audience, how absolutely dedicated he was to making sure that the show was the best that it could be. So it was hard to name these three people, but Shirley Strawn. I mean, Shirley Strawn, when I was in the Party Boys, not only sang beautifully, he was a wonderful guy. Like, he was a really cool guy to hang with, really smart, really funny. But when he walked on stage, very much like Jimmy and like my number one person, they took command of the stage as soon as they walked out there. There was not one person. I mean, someone could throw an insult or a comment at Shirley, and he would turn it around straight away and fire it straight back at him. Jimmy, on the other hand, might dive into the audience and pummel somebody, but that was a little bit of a laugh. But Shirley was really engaging, and my number one has to be Bernard Patrick Neeson, because Doc Neeson transformed from a mild-mannered, I would say, a mild-mannered hippie, a wonderful man who had the foresight to take the best out of what he'd learnt as an actor and then bring that into being a front man of a rock and roll band. So he was a totally different front man. He was not your, hey everybody, nice to see you, la da da. He would come out and yell out something totally inane, and engage people and get up to the front and get people with shadow boxing and doing that kind of stuff. But I think to witness that transformation of Doc, from Bernard Neeson into Doc Neeson, was pretty special, and I still to this day I think he's probably the greatest front man we've had in Australia. Bon Scott, very close.
To accept the weather and times turning screw. She lives in a tower armed with defenses. She learned from her mother and friends. She walks like a pharaoh, dresses in day glow. When she's in pain, she pretends. But late in the night, when the lights are all out, she slips off her stockings and shoes. She makes you her lover and lets you discover the smile she keeps. She keeps for you. She keeps no secrets from you. She keeps no secrets from you. She keeps no secrets from you. Throws her dice and I ching. Success in Japan, a rescuing man knows she won't change anything. 'Cause late in the night when the lights are all out, she slips off her stockings and shoes. She makes you her lover and lets you discover the smile she keeps. She keeps for you. She keeps secrets from you. She keeps no secrets from you.
Now, I've got to ask you the story about writing No Secrets, because to me, when you hear an Angels song, you hear the first chord or three chords and you know, wow, the Angels. Because when it was on the radio, it's like in your face. And I like that. It's like AC/DC. They're smart. George was in the Easy Beats, and then the story, their documentary is they sort of like, they were like number one. They were keeping their sound. Then they changed their sound so many times they lost their audience. But with AC/DC, he told his brothers, of course, when you get the formula, stick to it. And that's what they did.
Yeah, pretty much. You know, they had a blueprint right at the start, and they stuck to it. And I think that was probably something that the Angels, or particularly the Brewster brothers, were trying to emulate from the Young brothers, that they would continue the sound. I didn't think the Angels had that ability or strength to keep exactly the same kind of format the way of AC/DC had, because we had so many different kinds of songs. And if you look, you know, if you listen to No Exit and then you go into Dark Room, I mean, there are different kinds of songs. So, you know, I think when we got to Dark Room, I had I'd been writing music for a long time. I didn't write a lot of lyrics. I used to write a few lyrics. I never thought they were any good. And I just ended up in a band with three really good lyricists. So why bother writing lyrics, you know? Because for the person who had to sing them, Doc, he would probably want to write the lyrics that he wanted to sing anyway. So I sort of stopped trying to write Angel songs. I would just write music. George Young, I've got to give him a big love, because he encouraged me to write all sorts of different music, and also encouraged me to learn how to work the studios at Albert's. And when I knew how to work them, when I could walk in, turn them on, and record myself, he gave me a key to the studio. He said, "Here you go. Anytime you want to come in, there's your key." So I would go in there and record and do all of this sort of, some of it was experimental, some of it was pure pop, some of it was like film music, you know, that kind of stuff. But one day I'd sat down and I'd written this piece of music, and I had the melody, I had an arrangement. I had three parts for it. I had a verse, I had a chorus, I had a bridge. And I sort of, been working on it. I was thinking to myself, gee, it's really quite good. And then Doc came around one day and he told me that he'd written some lyrics after giving a ride to a hitchhiker, a young lady whose name was Amanda, and she was an actress. And in the short ride that he gave her, she poured out her entire story that she was into the I Ching. She was into, uh, you know, uh, yeah, anyway, she just poured out her story. Doc dropped her off, immediately went round the corner, and like all good songwriters, had a book with him, and he wrote down everything he could remember about Amanda the actress. He came to my house and he said, have you got any music? I said, yeah, I got heaps. Here's something I did the other day. And he said, interesting, interesting. I've got something here that I reckon might fit that. And he opened up the book to these lyrics of No Secrets, and they fitted perfectly with what I'd written, like 100%, almost 100%. I think I changed one word. He had Amanda the actress waits at the bus stop, and I said, I think station's better. I added station, I think, and probably a couple of other words here and there that I might have added. But, ostensibly, Doc had that all written out. And when we went to do Dark Room, we had left Albert's, of course, and we had another producer, a guy called John Boylan, who was also the executive for Epic Records, who had signed us. Now, John had produced records for Linda Ronstadt. He'd produced records for Rick Springfield. He'd done records for Little River Band. So you can see that his type of production maybe wasn't quite the right one for the Angels. So we were saying to him, well, maybe you should be a production consultant like Vander and Young and let us produce the songs as we want to produce them. And fortunately, he said yes. But on the first day of doing the rehearsals for the recording, I got there first because I had to set up a drum kit, and John Boylan was there. And I said to him, "Hey, did you get a cassette with all of the songs that we're going to do?" He said, "Yeah, yeah." I said, "Oh, did you? Was there one on there called No Secrets?" He said, "No, I didn't see that one." And he gave me the cassette, and No Secrets wasn't there. I said, "Oh, that was one that I did with Doc. It's actually a pretty good song, I thought." And he said, "Oh, well, no, it's not there." And I said, "I happen to have a copy of it right here." So I played it to him. And he said, "Oh, man, that's really good." He said, "We've got to work that one up." And then we worked that song up. And he said straight away, he said, "That's going to be the first single." So it went from probably not being on the record to being the first single, but it was a different kind of song. It was a different it didn't sound like the other songs. It was a bit poppier, and it turned out to be very, very popular in America because of that album-orientated rock kind of format. So I was hoping that maybe that would lead to maybe the question of like, have you got any more songs? Have you got any more music? We'd like to write with you, meaning the other guys. But that wasn't the case. They didn't really want to write with me. So, that was another reason to vamones, to get out of there.
Buzz, you've been involved a lot in the recording process and also building your own studios. But explain to me how this works. You've sold part of your recording equipment to Oasis, is that right?
I
How does
did.
that work? Do you just put it on eBay?
Yeah, look, what I did is you'll see on the back cover of the record of the book, on the back cover, there's me sitting at a desk. Have a look at that little photo of me sitting at a desk, right?
There you are,
So there
Buzz.
it is on the top left, right? That desk is an EMI TG12345 Mark III. It was a desk that was built by EMI in London. It was the same one that was in Abbey Road Studios. So if you have a look at the Beatles from around about 1969, 70, that's the desk that they were using, that kind of desk. EMI built 15 of them, and they were hand built, and then they put them in their studios around the world. So there were two in America, there were two in Sydney, There were 2 in South Africa, there was a couple in Asia, and there were some in London. I managed to buy one of those from a video post-production facility in Sydney who had it sitting out the back. It had been upgraded. They'd bought a new desk and they just had it sitting out the back. And I said to the guy that ran that place or owned the place, I said, you know, that desk you got sitting out the back. I said, you know, do you want to sell that? He said, oh, mate, yeah, I want to get rid of it, you know. And I went, oh, okay. He said, how much will you give me for it? And I said, oh, I don't know, 5 grand. And he said, yeah, okay. And like, I probably could have got it for $1,000. He just wanted to get rid of it, right? So then fast forward another 10 years. So I'd used it for 10 years and I'd made a lot of records with it. GANGgajang's debut album, you know, Reckless, like all of these songs that I made using this desk. But when I wanted to move back from the Southern Highlands back to Sydney, I couldn't afford to move back to where I used to live. The desk was actually really, really unique. There was only 15 of them ever made. So I thought, look, I guess I'm going to have to sell this desk. So I said to a broker in London, I want 100 grand for that desk. He said, oh, you know, you may not get 100 grand for it. I said, well, that's what I want for it. I want 100 grand. That would help me buy the house that I'm in now and help me build the studio that I'm in now. Anyway, he came back to me about 3 months later and he said, I've got someone that'll pay $80,000 for it. And I went, oh, yeah, all right, I guess so, you know, and I signed the thing, got the $80,000. And I said, okay, who bought it? And he said, Noel Gallagher from Oasis. And I went, that bastard, he could have paid 100 grand for it. So every time now that I hear a new Oasis song or a High Flying Bird song, I go, there's my bloody desk right there. I can hear it. But I did keep the schematic diagram of it. So I've actually had some modules made that sound like that. So I didn't lose out 100%. And besides, you can get it as a plug-in now for Logic.
Now, Graham, I'm going to ask you, at the height of the Angels, right, here in Australia, when you went overseas, there's a lot of young people that are drummers coming up. I want to know the drum kit that you use, the sticks that you use, the setup that you use, because drummers are really interested to know. They're fascinated by the drums.
Well, I was a Ludwig man when I was younger. I bought my first Ludwig kit probably when I was about 17. I bought it. I'd been playing in bands since I was 14. I talk about that in the book. The band that I played in was quite successful in Adelaide, so I was making reasonable money. So I was able to buy a Ludwig drum kit, you know, because Ringo had one. You know, I had to have one. But I love that. I love that kit, and I've still got it. If I look in that room in there, actually I can show you. There it is, sitting in that room in there.
Is it a black pearl?
No, I've got a pearl. I've got a Black Beauty snare drum. I've got many. I've also got. If you look at the cover of Face to Face, open up the cover of Face to Face, you'll see this blue Ludwig kit. It's a Perspex kit. I still use that. I still use the snare all the time. But when I started playing live, I got a sponsorship from Pearl Drums, and that was tied in with Billy Hyde Drum Clinic. I don't know if you remember in the old days, people used to have Billy Hyde Drum Clinic on their drums. So they were great to me. So I got very used to Pearl drums, and I really liked them. So you know, I've got Pearl drums that I will use live because I think all of their mounts, you know, the tom mountings and all of the stands are really solid. You know, they're great. And I and I don't have to carry them around. Somebody else does that for me. So, you know, that's kind of good. And you know, the thing really is with other stuff like sticks, it depends what I'm playing. In the Angels days, I think I used 5B, which was like really thick sticks, and I'd even hold them up the other way, hold them backwards, you know. And I used to go through drum heads like you wouldn't believe. I'd destroy a set of drum heads probably in a couple of gigs, 3 or 4 gigs or something. And that started to get very expensive. So I started to use lighter sticks. um, these days, yeah, look, it's a horse for a course, sort of. I'm playing with GANGgajang, maybe 747s and things like that, 5As. I use those. If I'm playing in the studio here, I'll use lighter sticks because what people don't actually realize that when you're recording, sometimes using lighter sticks and hitting it a little bit softer, you get a better sound than hitting it really hard. So yeah, it depends what music I'm playing, what drum kit I'm playing, what snare I'm using. So sometimes like I use these little popcorn snares. Sometimes I've got a heap of them. I've got about 10 of them, different sizes and different depths and all that sort of stuff. So it really is determines on what music I play.
We've acknowledged you for your contribution to the Australian music scene, but one thing I want to acknowledge you for as well is your help with humanitarian aid, particularly with your contribution to the Indigenous people with renal health and also with nutrition as well. Do you just want to quickly tell us how you got involved with that?
Yeah, look, I was really fortunate to meet Jimmy Little in 1999, and I met him through Mark Callahan, the singer of GANGgajang, who was working at Festival Records at the time. He was about to become the A&R man, the guy that picks the songs, picks the records that they're going to release. He saw he saw a cassette on a desk, and he said, "Well, that?" He recognized the little logo on it. And he said, "Whose is that? Is that from Brendan Gallagher from Karma County?" And the guy said, "Yes, that's a Jimmy Little record. We're not going to put it out though." And Mark said, "Can I have a listen to it?" And he took the cassette, went back to his office, put it on, and the first thing he heard was Quasimodo's Dream by the Reels, a Reels song sung by Jimmy. He walked back into the meeting the next day as an A&R man, his first meeting, and he said, I want to put this record out. And everyone laughed at him and said, "No, that won't go anywhere, mate. It won't go anywhere." He said, "Well, I'm going to do it anyway. I'm the A&R man. I'm putting it out." He rang me and said, "I'm putting out this record by Jimmy Little. Would you possibly just be prepared to look after the record? Meaning, if he needs to play a gig or something, could you organise that for him?" And I said, "Sure, I'd be very happy to do that." And I met Jimmy, and I knew about him. I knew what he had done in the past. Um, and the moment I met him, I knew there was another reason I was meeting him. It wasn't just about music. And I reckon within 2 weeks of knowing that guy, we had spoken enough about, because also the record, I might say, Messenger was the album that we're talking about. That went on to Triple J, introduced this whole new audience to Jimmy Little. So there's all these 20-year-olds, 30-year-old people that wanted to hear a 62-year-old Aboriginal man singing. That meant me going to all these groovy places and festivals and WOMAD, and I took him around the world, for goodness sake. I took him to New York, I took him to London, I took him to LA, I took him to Seattle, Germany, Singapore, all around the world. And just at the moment when Jimmy's career would have just like gone ballistic worldwide, his kidneys failed. And I said to him, "Well, mate, that was a good couple of years. I guess you're going to be taking it easy now." And he said, "Oh, no, 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 no. There's more to do." And I said, "Like what?" And he said, "Well, I'm going to do this dialysis called peritoneal dialysis, which means that I can travel while I'm dialyzing." And I said, "Really?" He said, "Yep." He said, "I'm going to go around to all of the communities that I used to go to, and I'm going to talk to people about renal dialysis, about eating healthier food, about people taking control of their own destiny." And I went, "Goodness gracious, that is just full on." And he looked at me and he said, "Would you be up for helping me do that?" And I just said straight up, I said, "Yeah, yeah, I would," because we would go to communities and I would see firsthand. Look, that's telling me there's another interview coming up. we would we would go to these communities and I would see firsthand what the conditions were like in these communities, what the local food store was like, how they were selling an old lettuce, that nobody would want to buy, that was $10. So we started to work to advocate for better awareness of renal dialysis in remote communities, which then led to me becoming the CEO of Uncle Jimmy Thumbs Up, which was a charity that we established with Jimmy and with three beautiful trustees, and we started to do nutrition education for kids. And the way we did that is used music and video. So we would go to communities, we would talk to kids, we would write songs with them about eating good food, about drinking water instead of sugar drink, about having some exercise, about looking after yourself. And those songs would become the kids in the schools would take ownership of those songs, and that has now 20 years later. I'm still doing that work. We've just been funded by the National Indigenous Australians Agency to do 2 years of work in the remote communities again, doing nutrition education and basically building on the work that we've done together with two other people, one from Monash Uni and one from Uni SA. We came up with the Good Tucker app, which looks like that. And the Good Tucker app is a brilliant piece of kit. You read a barcode on it. And I'm trying desperately to just get it set up here. That's kind of what it looks like on your phone. And it comes up and you read a barcode like so. You read a barcode, he says. Come on. And you get that. That's if you get a bottle of water, you get 2 thumbs up. If you were to hit a bottle of sugar drink, you'd get that. So what it does is it reads a barcode and it tells you whether it's a good product, not so good, or a bad one. That app now is being used in probably 180 communities all across the top end. It's used by store managers to make sure that they've got all the good food in the right spot, or all the bad food in the right spot, which is at the back of the store. All of the sugar drink now, most of the sugar drink doesn't go in the fridge. So if people walk in on a hot day, the water and the good drinks are the ones that are in the fridge. So we do all of this kind of work. We do music education as well. I do a lot of work at Uluru. I've been there 5 times this year. I'm going up again in October for the 40th anniversary of the Handback of the Rock to the Anangu people. So I'm working with the local band, the Mutijulu band. I've recorded 15 songs with them. I've worked with the kids in the school, with one of our directors, Dr. Shelley Morris. She's an amazing singer. So we go out and we do this work, and it's probably, as I describe in the book, the thing which has given me the most heart out of everything I've ever done. I wake up in the morning, I go, what can I do for Thumbs Up? I love making music. That's all good, but this is what I do. This is what I do from my heart. This is what I do that makes me, so glad that I've had a long life. I've had a productive life, and I've actually got something that I can give back to people as well.
We want everyone to go out and buy No Secrets. The book's out.
Cool.
I know you're doing a lot of signings on the book.
Yeah.
Let's go on the net. Tell everyone your website and where they can get the book, Graham.
Absolutely. Well, it's wonderful. All you have to do is Google No Secrets by me and it comes up. It's almost the first thing that comes up. So you can get it at Woolworths, you can get it at Coles, you can get it pretty much at any bookstore, or you can get it online from Booktopia or Amazon or one of them. But yeah, look, it's not just about being a drummer in a rock band. It's got a bit of that, but it's also got my work with Jimmy Little. It's got one of the funniest stories I think is my night with Tiny Tim. That was a very funny story. So there's some funny stories in there. There's some heartwarming stories in there. I do pay tribute to my 3 amigos, Doc and Chris Bailey and Jimmy. They were the 3 people probably over my entire career. I mean, I played in bands with Chris Bailey for 50 years. You know, every time I'd produce a record, I'd need a bass player. Hey, Chris, can you come and play bass for me? He was in GANGgajang. He was in the Stetsons. He played in Jimmy Little's band. Jimmy Little, as I've already said, changed my life considerably, and I still, to this day, I do work in his name. And Doc, of course, was this guy that just totally transformed the Angels. So, you know, thank you so much, guys. I really had a good chat. I really enjoyed it. So, you know, thanks so much again, and hopefully see you in person sometime.
Thank you, Graham. You are a Australian music legend and world class. We thank you so much.
Thanks, Plastic. Thank you, Andrew. It's been a pleasure.